Deion Sanders just sent a very loud, but a very clear and a very short, precise message to all of college football. What is that message, might you ask? We're here. Who is we? That's the Colorado Buffs. I mean, all of the offseason, ever since he's gotten this job, there's been the naysayers and all of the guys saying, yeah, he can do it, but he's going to need 3 to 4. Yeah, he has some guys, but is his son really that guy? Can he lead in the Power 5, in the Pac-12? Yeah, he had the record, but did he really play anybody at the HBCUs? I mean, yeah, he's prime, but can he handle the level of coaching at this level? All of the things we've been saying, he kept the receipts. Travis Hunter kept the receipts. Deion Sanders kept the receipts. Today, we're going to go through this game. And if you haven't watched it, hopefully I can bring you into the game because I watched it and it was some very entertaining football. I mean, I love the NFL. I love college football, but I think this, regardless of the platform, whether it be professional or college or even high school, I think this is already going to be one of the most entertaining games of the season. It's not a lot of things that may and will top this. Now, one thing I do want to say is we're going to start off with Shedeur. I mean, he was the guy who was leading the troops. He's probably the biggest storyline coming out of this game, other than Travis Hunter, who just casually played 100+ snaps. They asked him, were you gassed? How did you play at an elite level at receiver and corner? He said, the game's over. I played over 100 snaps. Yeah, I may be tired. You may look and think that I'm tired. I'm not. I'm ready to go back out there again. That's the type of mindset that this guy has. He's going to be elite, and we're going to talk about him in this video. But Deion Sanders, 38 of 47, 510 yards, 4 touchdowns, everything we look at. He broke the team's passing record in his first game on the team. Now, Deion Sanders is not going to throw for 500 yards every game, and I want to preface everything in the entire video by saying, disclaimer, this doesn't mean national championship, but that's not to rain on their parade. That's not to say they're not a good team. I'm just saying it's a long season, but we got some real hype right now, some real excitement. But Deion Sanders, though, I mean, when I saw him, he's flushing out of the pocket. He's making all the right reads. I think there were only 2 throws in which I would probably take back from Deion. 95% of his plays and throws in this game were money, even if it was incomplete. I mean, the closest thing I think that I saw and what I can compare him to just right now, based on what I saw in this game with the sample size, I look at a guy that's playing for the Houston Texans. I look at a guy who played for Ohio State last year. You all know who that is, and I want you to drop who's your comparison. I mean, of course, he's his own guy, but we love to compare. That's what we do in the game of sports, and I saw C.J. Stroud. The accuracy in thinking about under pressure, C.J. Stroud's not the most elite guy under pressure, and that's not saying Shedeur isn't good under pressure, but he's not the fastest. He's not a 4-4 guy. So if you can blitz him and if you can get guys who, we're going to talk about the offensive and defensive line, which I think was kind of if we talk about all of the high points, those were some of the lower points when we talk about trench play. But if you send those guys and what we saw when they had pressure up the interior, if they had edge contained with Hodges, it was some of those plays where he couldn't get out of the pocket. But when he could, though, he's throwing on the run. He's throwing the ball deep, and he's decisive. He's precise. He knows when to take the shot. He knows when to hit the intermediate passes, all of the little things I talk about. And, I mean, the more I'm thinking about it and the more I'm talking about it, I just know NFL scouts were all over this game. Everything we saw. Now, he has to be consistent and keep it up, but you're setting a really high bar, even with Colorado, not just Shedeur, Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. I mean, everything that they've did in this game is setting a high bar. We're looking at how they approached the game, how they handled all of those naysayers, how they just took everything they had and they ran with it. If TCU, they had the big-time kick return, they scored, and they came back and ran with it. Chandler Morris, he had the read option touchdown, they came back and ran with it. They have a turnover, they fumble the football off of our receiver's leg, which was really an awkward play, but they come back, they get a defensive stop, they run with it. Those types of things. Now, I want to talk about the running backs, and the run game was not dominant in this game for Colorado, but Dylan Edwards. I mean, I like Wilkinson. I like Hankerson. They brought in some different taste, I would say, in the backfield. They're all good players, but Dylan Edwards really stole the show, and it wasn't even on the ground. It was in the receiving game. I mean, having the 2 touchdowns in the receiving game, actually 3 receiving touchdowns when I look at this, excuse me. I mean, he was a guy that they caught him in man coverage against Hodge, number 6, the linebacker for TCU. You catch him, and it's 4th down. Shedeur's in the pocket. He doesn't really have any reads. It was good coverage on the back end. Where do we go? If I know it's man coverage and I know my running back is on a flare route and I can catch him right there at the right time coming across the field, who's going to be on him? Typically, it's going to be a safety, but in this case, it was a linebacker. You catch him, he runs, he breaks some tackles. I mean, really, he was a guy, he returned kicks. He did a lot of different things for this team. And then I think after halftime, that was the play where they actually had to call a timeout so they didn't get delay a game. And then they come back with the screen pass on second down, get it to Dylan Edwards. He breaks a couple tackles. Now he's going again. And he had everything going. And then he caught another flare out. That wasn't really a big time catch, but those other two in the second half were the big time ones. I mean, he's a player. And Coach Prime said it. It's not a matter of if this guy's going to make a play in the game. It's a matter of when. We saw it. When the things were pushed against the table, when the chips were all pushed to the front of the table, Dylan Edwards connected with Deion Sanders. Hats off to him. But we look at some of those other guys in the receiver games. I mean, he had 4 receivers over 100 yards. Travis Hunter, I mean, after getting a pick, he didn't have any touchdowns, but he had a lot of big-time catches, had 2 drops, which we all saw, I'm pretty sure. He had the one where he was down the field, and really on both of them, he failed to connect with the catch through the contact with the ground. And then actually on that first one where they had the defensive pass interference, his foot didn't get inbounds before he secured the football. So just those little types of things. And he could have had 2 interceptions. Dropped one of those interceptions on a route which he jumped. It was a slant route, got in front of it. And it's funny because we say that he's running these routes. He's an elite receiver. He's an elite corner. But it's like he's running routes backwards. I'm so good at this. I know what you're going to do because I'm a good receiver. And in my mind, I know what a good receiver is going to do. I think it does give him an edge when we talk about a guy playing both ways. But there's 2 other guys. I think he's going to be primarily defense if you had to pick where we want to put him at in the game. So with that being said, we put some of the other receivers in the game. Now they got 2 of them where he doesn't have to be a primary offensive or primary 2-way player because you got Xavier Weaver. I mean, he was getting down the field. In TCU, they got Josh Newton, one of the better corners in all of college football. He's going to be a draft guy. And then they got Jimmy Horn Jr. We've been hearing about him in training camp, all of these things, the electric speed guy. And I was surprised with the volume. I know he's a big play threat because he had the post and then it was scramble drill. Shadir flushed out left. He came back for the ball, wide open, boom. But I know that. I don't have to talk about that. I was surprised with the screen passes, the catching the ball in the short areas, the intermediate areas, getting more consistent with the route running. I just thought he was a big play guy. I'm going to be honest. That's what I thought he was. But today I saw he's looking like a complete receiver. Xavier Weaver, a complete receiver. These guys being special. Now, I do want to give some shine to really 2 guys, and it's funny because they had Ham at linebacker. I like the linebacker play. It was pretty solid. Missed some tackles, but that's some things that have to be cleaned up. In the trenches, they have to clean a lot of that up. Getting a better pass rush. Now, the pass rush came alive in that 4th quarter and the last drive, especially in the run defense. You know, because we say, TCU, you've been running the ball the entire game. Just run it. You're down 42-45. All you need to do is get in field goal range or score and win the game. They ran the ball, but they didn't get anywhere. I was surprised by that because I was really rooting for them to run the ball if they wanted a shot to win or get in field goal range. So hats off to the defense, but you got a lot to clean up with that run defense. Now, it's funny because we just talked about him. I mean, Travis Hunter was special on defense. They tried him. He gave up 1 reception. Whoop-de-doo. Shiloh was making some big-time plays. That's Deion Sanders' other son. So you got Shadur and Shiloh making big-time plays. You have to love that. But my guy, who I think was very special on defense, had an interception, making big-time plays, playing in the box, playing in man coverage, doing some different things. Now, he gave up a touchdown to a player and a prospect that we're going to talk about a little later. But that's Trevor Woods. I mean, he's the only returning starter on this Colorado defense. Coach Prime told him, if you do everything right, and you show us that you're the player who was really one of the best players on the Colorado defense last year when they went 1-11. Now, you go 1-11 last year. You got 1 win already. You matching that. That's kind of crazy. But I think that he's a special safety. I mean, he's 6'2", about 205 to 210 pounds. He can get physical with you. He can cover. And really, he baited Chandler Morris on that one pick where he got back to the read late and then he threw it. I mean, Trevor Woods came out of nowhere. On the TV view, it looked like he had him for a second, but he was late with the football, but it looked like he could have had him. And then he threw it. Trevor Woods coming. I mean, skyrocketing from the left side of the field, making that interception. That's something that was special. And that's really talking about everything outside of Colorado. So the skill players dominated. The offensive line, I think in the second half, they gave up some things in the pass rush and some exploitations, which teams are going to look at. They're going to say, okay, I know how we beat these guys. We give get on the edge sometimes, and then we mix that up. We run directly through the middle. I mean, defensive tackles were kind of non-existent in this game. And then I think about also, we come off the edges. We send blitzes because TCU has some good edges and some good interior defensive linemen. They were starting to eat. They were starting to catch on to the team we saw last year defensively because they run a weird 3-5 stack and all of these different defensive schemes. We're not going to get into that here, but it's crazy just to see how good they were and how they can step up. But in that back end, I mean, they got had. They were had, especially. I talk about Newton. He's an NFL guy that I think will go very high at the cornerback position. But overall, it was a rough day for the secondary. You gave up 510 yards. Now, I do want to touch on TCU, though, because it's not all good. A lot of it isn't good, but it's not all bad because Chandler Morris, although the stats, I mean, he had a rough day. He had 2 interceptions, had the interception to Trevor Woods, and then he had the interception on the running back flare where he threw. I don't think he threw that ball too late. I think that was more Travis Hunter making an exceptional play, but he had the ball that went out there. He threw it. Travis Hunter really extended and got that football. Outside of that, I think that the guy who I'm talking about who actually beat Trevor Woods on a play in coverage, Jared Wiley. I mean, we're going to talk about Imani Bailey and Trey Sanders, two special running backs. But Jared Wiley, I think he's an NFL guy. I mean, he's 6'7", 250 to 260. He can play inline. He was lined up in the slot. He was lined up in X. Different types of things they did with Jared Wiley. He looks like one of those NFL tight ends, and he has athleticism. Now, he had the one catch where Chandler threw it a bit wide and he couldn't really extend and get it. He does have a large catch radius, but this was kind of pushed out of bounds. He could not secure that one, and that was really the only one I say, dang, if you make that catch. I mean, teams like stuff like that when you're a tight end, but really adding to Jared Wiley, they have some other guys who are very good. It just wasn't a lot of volume for some of the other guys. I mean, we saw J.P. Richardson, Dylan Wright, Jack Beck. He's pretty solid. He has some catches across the middle. But I think Savion Williams, he has to be a guy who gets more touches in the passing game. I mean, this was a team who, when they saw they could run the football, they ran the football. But I think based on what I saw early on, it's a pass-happy team. Last year, it was a run team. I mean, they had Quentin Johnston, but really outside of that, they love to run the football. I think this year it's more balanced with a lot of those things really leaning to a passing scheme because you have a plethora of receivers. But Savion, I mean, he's a 6'5" guy. He's 225. You think about you lose Quentin Johnston to the NFL draft, and this is a guy who's stepping up. I mean, he kind of has that size profile. He has some athleticism to his game. So moving forward, I do want to see him get a little more touches in that scheme. But coming back to the running game, Imani Bailey is special. I mean, I think about the play where Shiloh missed the tackle, and one play with the linebacker, he had him tackled and he ran through him. I mean, he had this guy wrapped up. He continued to drive his feet, and he ran through him and then got a big-time gain. Imani Bailey, hats off to you because, yes, you lost the game by 3 points. Yes, a lot of people will talk about Colorado because it's Colorado, but I really liked you. And I like what I saw to Trey Sanders as well, a guy who was a high-profile recruit, transferred from Alabama, had some injuries within his process. But overall, I think if he can stay healthy along with Imani, I think they have skill sets that really complement each other. I look at Imani, he's more of a complete runner. But then I look at Trey Sanders, he has a lot of juice. So that's what you want to have. TCU will be all right. I just want to say that and talk about them because I saw too many good things out of this team to really just push it off and knock it off like they lost, okay, it's Colorado and all these things. That's not the narrative. I'm not throwing false narratives and trying to push that forward. TCU is a good football team, just like Colorado had a good game, and hopefully if they continue to be consistent, they'll be a good football team to a great football team. But defensively, there were some guys I want to point out. Johnny Hodges. I mean, you got Hodges and Hodge. It kind of goes together, and they're the two linebackers. They had some big-time plays. I mean, Johnny Hodges was coming off the edge. He was covering guys in coverage. He came. It was a red zone play where Shedeur scrambled out of the pocket. He was in coverage. He took away the read, and then as Shedeur thought the running back was going to block for him, he came up and came down, and then you got Johnny Hodges. He's closing in and making the tackle. I mean, that's one of the plays where you do two things in one and end up making the play with the statistics. I really like to see that out of him. He had a sack as well. Jamoy Hodge, he had a sack, 2 tackles for loss. This is a really good football team, and I keep saying it. Josh Newton in the back end, he was lined up with Travis Hunter and some of the other guys on the team. And I mean, overall, you have to think there are some things that they really want to clean up, especially in the secondary and really pre-snap. A lot of the penalties and miscues and errors that they had early on in the game that you say, okay, we've had all these penalties. We've gave up all these things in coverage and we're still right there. So if you clean up the game, who knows whose game it is? They could have won this game if they didn't have all of those errors, miscues, coaching things, all of the different things. But I really do like Sonny Dykes. I want to give hats off to him because he gave a great performance against Coach Prime, and we actually love to see that. I mean, like I said, one of the more exciting games, regardless of NFL or college. And I think that Colorado sent a very loud message, but I think TCU didn't back down at all because, yes, Colorado were the underdogs, and TCU had a 20-point over-under on this game. That's kind of crazy when you look at it and say how it played out, but there's really a lot of good things to look at for both teams, things you want to improve for both teams, things that are good and you want to continue to have consistency within those things for both teams. Let me know what you think about the game in the comments. Hopefully this finds you well. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And like I said, it's 24-hour sports. We touch on it all. You probably never thought you'd see a college football video, but here we are and here it is. NFL, NBA, college, everything you want to see on this channel. NFL season starts Thursday. We're about to watch some more college football. I'm telling you. Lock in. But thank you for watching as always. That's going to do it for today's show. And now we out.